What riches of kindness he has lavished on us. Tonight, I'm going to need you to get your seatbelts on. We're going to go fast and furious. Have you seen Secret Church by David Platt? Ask Brent about it. He does 6 hours straight and nonstop. Well, they stop for breaks a little bit, but we're going to do Secret Church tonight, okay? So get ready. You don't have to take notes. We'll be sending you some information and just summaries and things, just so you don't need to stop and take notes. Just try to kind of absorb what we're trying to do tonight, okay? And just to kind of tie into this morning, when I told you about the young man in the high school who left the church and defriended my friend's son when his dad was appointed as an elder, what the point I think my friend was trying to make when we're addressing this cultural issue that's out there versus the cultural issues in here, he was saying you might want to think about that and be careful, because he says the understanding there's a lot of kids leaving the church now, and like this young man, he said, could it be that some of your relatives, kids, might, he says, they're having a hard time, and I'll explain in a minute, they're having a hard time believing that we believe what we say we believe. Let me say that again. They're having a hard time believing that we believe, John, they're having a hard time believing that you believe what you say you believe. I remember William Fay, my first lesson on how to do evangelism, he was sharing with a lady on the plane, and she said, I believe, but what about all the hypocrites in the church? And William Fay said, if I was ever to find the perfect church and join it, it would no longer be perfect. That was a blessing for me. I told you a bit about quicksand and grandchildren this morning, and what I didn't tell you, the pastor that stole my grandchildren, he recommended a book to the church back in May, and it was an entry-level theology book. And my dear oldest grandson Abraham asked Papa D if he would go through the book with me, and we're going through it. Theology. Abraham, 10 years old. It's pretty cool. But it seems like for the past, almost every week for the past 6 or 7 weeks, you know what he's asked me? He's asked me, Papa D, how can we know this is true? This young man probably knows more scripture than 5 or 10 of us put together. He knows the New City Catechisms, not just the children's version. He knows the adult version. They just finished, well, I did it with them, Psalm 139, and then they finished Romans 8. I couldn't keep up with them. And the little boy, Abraham is asking me, Papa D, how can we know? I want us to be careful, and that's what I'm trying to do. I'm trying to be careful and help you be careful. Quickly, our elders have preached through. Where is that? All right. Oh, I have a handout for you. This is just a summary of the resources. Only if you would like any help with finding questions, answers to certain things, read whatever they're available. Our pastors, our elders, preach through, again, the foundation of our efforts here in terms of gender and sexuality. December the 1st, Brent preached Genesis 3, the lies the enemy tells us. January the 7th, he preached on the inerrancy of Scripture. Hunter, the sufficiency of Scripture. Byron on the 21st, the authority of Scripture. On the 28th, Brent preached on biblical anthropology, about man, where we came from, and gender identity, Genesis 1 and 2. Then today on homosexuality, Romans 1, 1 Corinthians 6. And I've missed the 1 Timothy in here. I will send you a little more detail. I ask each one of them, give me the main emphasis you were trying to help us understand, and I'll send that to you. It's not in here. At break, I want you to come in. There's 2 pages to this. Everybody, if you would like one, can come and get that. So our kind of going to show you some of our resources. What I've tried to do is just glean the recommendations from these are kind of our experts, our resources. Rosaria Butterfield, her first book we mentioned, and Brent went over it a little bit, The Secret Thoughts of an Unlikely Convert, highly recommended. Her second book, The Gospel Comes with a House Key. There's another 2 or 3 books between this, and the last was The 5 Lies of the Anti-Christian Age. In those, she's trying to help us to be empathetic towards that culture. In this one, the second story is about the grandchild, and she comes out blazing guns. But at the end, she does have suggestions for us. But real quickly, the 5 lies. Homosexuality is normal. Lie number 2, being a spiritual person is kinder than being a biblical Christian. Number 3, feminism is good for the world and the church. Number 4, transgenderism is normal. And number 5, modesty is an outdated burden that serves male dominance and holds back women. When I heard about her and this, and I heard a podcast about it, and it's kind of like, is this the same Rosaria that wrote these other books? And so I went ahead and shared that, even though it's hard. But I wanted you to hear that. And my question to Rosaria, when I heard that, and also the podcast, she said, I'm going to name some names. And I thought, well, Rosaria, what about the other Rosarias out there? The difference between acceptance and approval. Your elders, Byron's main concern was that word acceptance, and that was the word that she used because that's the word that the dear older than me pastor who met her used to help her understand the difference between approval or affirmation and acceptance. And what I want us to do maybe during the Q&A and then in our future things is let's get Byron. When he said that, it's kind of, oh, you know what, that's right. I kind of felt that. But what we want to do is just make sure we have this solid, deep canyon between those two things, acceptance and affirmation or approval, okay? So let's think about that. And the other thing that dear Hunter was concerned about, and I think it's been hinted at in the videos last night, but he was concerned about us. And again, what the recommendations we have about being in a strong church, we'll touch on that a bit more, prayer. He's concerned about the potential, and and Denny Burke says, we're under constant pressure to not upset the holiday, not to upset the apple cart. So we're just kind of like, okay, I'm just not going to ruin the Christmas this time. I'm going to use that pronoun, or yes, they can sleep together in my house. And that's what Hunter's saying. We got to be careful of which way the influence goes. All right, hang on, here we go. Ready? The difference between approval and acceptance or affirmation. The subtitle of this section is How to Stay Connected to Loved Ones Who Believe These Lies Without Falling for Them Yourself. There you go, Hunter. First, she ponders what happened to split the evangelical church. Again, I just blasted through this. She blasts the megachurch pastors more interested in their ratings on Twitter than their flock. Then, speaking of like-minded churches to PBC, that was my paraphrase, these faithful, unpretentious churches have blessed many a true Christian, and during times of seismic shifts, they are holding down the fort. These watchmen will care for you as you try to stay connected to your lost loved ones without falling for the indoctrination. If you love a prodigal, the first order of business is to make sure you are worshiping in a faithful church with a pastor and elders who will pray for you and shepherd you. Principles of loving people lost to these lies. If this is coming across too strong for those who are not in our lane or camp, this is Rosaria. You can blame it on her, okay? Principles of loving people lost to the lies. Above all, missed something here. One helpful principle in loving your prodigal without falling into indoctrination is holding church membership in a faithful church where you are shepherded by faithful men. The other is knowing the difference between acceptance and approval. Acceptance means living in reality and not fantasy. If your daughter calls herself a lesbian and you need to accept that. If your son Rex calls himself Matilda, you need to accept that. He really is living in such a dangerous state of delusion and deception. This is reality right now. Acceptance is an important step in seeing the person you love in the sin pattern in which he or she is trapped. Acceptance, however, does not include believing his interpretation of how he got here or what it means. Acceptance does not include believing Rex is Matilda. Acceptance does not include being manipulated by the therapist who asked, would you rather have a dead son or a living daughter? I think that was called blackmail. Acceptance does not lose sight of Jesus and the cross he calls us to bear. So one thing, those that might feel this comes across pretty harsh, I'm not going to be able to get to, but I want to share with my dear loved ones, and that is kind of what is biblical love. And one or two of the podcasts really nail that, and I've got a little section on that, but I'm just not going to have time to get to it. But when this comes across a little bit harsh, maybe, and again, we hear, and Brent preached on it this morning, the difference in God is love and love is God. And that's what, this is biblical love. And this does a really good job of helping us understand biblical love, but we don't have time to get to it. Approval means that you give the whole situation a blessing. Approval means that more than loving your daughter in her sin, it means calling her sin by another name, grace, blessing, illness, and compartmentalizing and shrinking your Christian life in the process. Approval means denying Christ and your responsibility to carry the cross that your age and status produce. It means getting Luke 14:26-27 wrong. If anyone comes to me and does not hate hyperbole, according to Platt in the last secret church on hermeneutics, Brent, hyperbole. The difference between acceptance and approval is the fine line that a Christian who loves someone trapped in by these lies must navigate. The fine line. Byron, let's make sure that line tonight during the Q&A gets a lot deeper and a lot wider. Acceptance is a mature response. It means living life with your eyes open and facing reality. Acceptance requires the ability to be compassionate and sympathetic. Approval is an immature response. It means allowing empathy to overrule what you know. There you go, Hunter. To be true in the hopes that standing in the shoes of your loved one will help. Both gestures, acceptance and approval, desire to offer comfort in affliction. The former does so biblically, as can be apprehended in the open lines of 2 Corinthians, where Paul encourages the church in Corinth to comfort those who are in affliction with the comfort which we ourselves are comforted. We are all counselors if you are a Christian, so this is for everyone. The comfort surely is not the affliction. The comfort is God's blessing of union with Christ, that sweet, irrevocable, eternal, spiritual, and unbreakable belonging that we must have with the Lord, who never leaves us nor forsakes us. Okay, I kind of like Rosaria again. Okay, skipped a few paragraphs. Here are some principles to apply as you seek to accept without approving or affirming. Don't think that just because your prodigal is an adult that you are no longer parenting. You will be your children's parent until the day the Lord takes you home or them. Your prodigal has declared war against reality and believes that she is a non-binary or a different sex than that which God gave her or him ask her to define what all those new vocabulary words mean and don't feel compelled to use them. No blackmail. No biblical doctrine better than you ever have. Use biblical doctrine as a filter for new words your child has embraced. Have a systematic theology game plan. Systematic theology is invaluable in learning how to use Scripture in a fluent way. I forgot to bring my biblical counseling kind of a circle on what do we do when we teach intense discipleship. And it's talking about listen to the Word of God, preach, reading the Word of God, memorizing the Word. And these are disciplines that we teach to become habit in people's lives. And that's what we're talking about, okay? Systematic theology is invaluable in learning to use Scripture in a fluent way. My favorite systematic theology is the Westminster Shorter Catechism. I memorized most of what the 50 or 52 of the New City Catechisms. I think it was got 100 and something. Make sure that if you are not, again, this is something for your elders, okay? Make sure that if you're not in a faithful biblical church, you can get to one fast. And once you get there, take the covenant of church membership, even though it may mean breaking in friendship with your former church. You must get to a faithful church for the sake of your own soul. There you go. You need more help than you think. You are more vulnerable than you believe. Church is not a social club. It's a training for war. The second in chief is the faithful preaching of the Word of God. The second mark of the church is the rightful administration of the sacraments of baptism and the Lord's Supper. The third mark is a proper exercise of church discipline. We saw and heard of those today. This mark refers to the corrective discipline of a church may use to win back a straying soul, as we heard today, and also to the form. I didn't write this, Brett. Don't you love it when God shows up by coincidence? There's no coincidence. The mark refers to the corrective discipline a church may use to win back a straying soul, and also to the formative discipline of instructing followers of Christ in discipleship. Biblical counseling is intense discipleship. All right, next, pray. I love this. All right, listen, this is Rosaria. Acceptance of your prodigal's real life means getting every Christian you know to pray for her conversion. This is no time for pride or for hiding. You need help. You need to deal honestly and ask for this help. Praying for your prodigal you love requires focus. It means taking stock of those distractions that allow you to steal your joy and attention from the Lord. Internet, gossip, entertainment, weak theology. Praying for your prodigal may be your highest calling and most blessed Christian. She's redeemed herself, by golly. Have you read Christopher Yuan or Angela Yuan's son and mother? We mentioned this morning, co-writing team in their memoir of faith, Out of a Far Country, a gay son's journey to God, a broken mother's search for hope. I love subtitles. If not, please do. This book is the most faithful trail guide for accepting and loving, but not approving of your beloved prodigal. Can you believe it? This mother who was not a Christian was so desperate, she became a Christian. I love it. Rosaria, she was a literature professor, and the pastor challenged her to read the Bible. I thought that's just so funny. And he's got a sense of humor. Going boldly to the throne of grace requires Did I miss any? Yeah. Christopher Yuan, that's going to be our recommendation, and it's for the youth and their families. And by the way, Brent mentioned it this morning. It's so engaging. He's got so many graphics. He stops here and there, and you're asking questions. So it's not something that's going to be boring. It's going to be interesting, and it's G-rated, I think. And so, again, hey, listen, so I need Passport. So I've been through about half of it. I need y'all to go through it and just let me know if there's any red flags. So please, okay? This is part of Passport. It's building agency, okay? Boldly going to the throne of grace requires daily repentance of your own sins. I think we did that with that song. But this means not taking your prodigal sin as your own. It means repenting of your sin of self-pity. Satan wants you to feel responsible that you have a prodigal child. He wants you to think it's all your fault and that God has punished you. What if you are the only Christian in the family who is bringing your prodigal to the throne of grace? Don't lose a minute of time feeling sorry for yourself. You have too much spiritual work to do. Get on with it. she's pretty forceful. Accepting means not telling your prodigal lies and not buying into hers or his false theology. Try to stay connected to your prodigal. Stay close. The well calls it proximity. That's one of my P's. Proximity. Stay close. Just as close as you can. Don't be the one that breaks that tie, okay? Try to stay connected. When the holidays come around, pray that the Lord would give you a clear path to gather without compromise. Ask your elders and pastors for help. If your elders and pastors are too busy or too fearful to help, find a faithful church that will. Ours will. Deal with each situation carefully, asking God to help you to see how He wants you to serve. Here's some following questions in there. Here's our Q&A that I've encountered recently. Do I attend the gay wedding of my son? I think that's pretty clear. She says, no, you cannot attend your gay son wedding and maintain faithful witness for Christ. My daughter and her lesbian partner having a baby by artificial insemination. They want me to attend the baby shower. Should I? That's for discussion. My son and his husband, they've got that on my game shows now. You know that. Want to come home for Christmas. Please forgive me for my yuck factor. Rosario says she has a yuck factor too, and her yuck factor was for the way the church has had a yuck factor. Guilty as charged. Please help me. My son and husband want to come home for Christmas. My other adult children who are strong Christians don't want them to come home because they don't want to have to explain their relationship to my grandchildren, ages 5, 7, 8, 12, and 15. It's the elephant in the room. What should I do? You have to choose which set of children needs you more. If the whole family cannot come together, that's fine, but you still need to choose. I believe that your adult children who are in the Lord need you less than your prodigal son and his friend do. My advice is to invite your son and his friend and have a quiet dinner. At the end of dinner, have a time for family devotion, open the Word, pray together, present the gospel, and don't let them sleep in the same room. She didn't say that, but it's given. My 12-year-old daughter, number 4, wants to start taking testosterone and wants me to call her Jack. I didn't make that up. I just noticed that. Her teachers are at her public school support this. Oh, I'm sorry, I did it again. Grace and truth. Okay, I'm working on it. Y'all pray. What should I do? Abigail Schreier's book, Irreversible Damage. Was that mentioned last night? No? Oh, okay, yeah. Irreversible Damage. I don't even think we need to get to the subtitle, do we? Irreversible Damage. The transgender craze seducing our daughters. You know, they mentioned trend last night, and the more I've been thinking about this, it's kind of like, I just started thinking, you know what? It was a trend when I was that age to grow long hair, smoke cigarettes, and start smoking pot. And I was a middle-aged high school kid that was looking for somebody to accept me. In one of the podcasts, one of the pastors said, he said, if I was to grow up in this culture right now, he said, I don't do sports. He says, I am very emotional, like Byron. No, like me. He says, it could be that they could have convinced me that I might be in that camp. Irreversible damage, the gender. So my question is, I don't hear him talking about trends. Don't trends come and go? Could that be maybe something that might help our kids to see it's a trend? I started trying to look back at some of the trends. Oh, I did find a link. I'll try to send that to you, a link on trends that are gone from the 1980s. They're gone. My 12-year-old, My 12-year-old, okay, her teachers in public school support this. What do I need to do? Read Abigail Shrier's book, Irreversible Damage. The first thing you need to do is unplug your daughter from those deep wells of untruth, school, take her out of the government schools, take away her phone, and get her immediately into biblical counseling. Biblicalcounseling.org. That's ACBC. My son is willing to come home for Thanksgiving, but only if he and his boyfriend can stay at our house. What should I do? Make separate accommodations if you have a large home with 2 guest rooms, and let your son know that you are very much looking forward to having him and his friend join you, but the bottom line is we need to sleep in separate rooms if they stay in your house. My lesbian daughter says that heterosexual sexual sin, can you say that 3 times? And homosexual sin are on the same moral level. Is that true? Are both heterosexual and homosexuality terms of moral corruption? Are they equally so? Brent touched on that a little bit this morning. I'm going to not give you her answer because it's pretty strong. Most of our experts who try to weigh the grace and truth, I think she may have gone a little bit heavy on the truth side on that answer, and so I want to have grace, and maybe we can ask that in our Q&A. But what we want to do is help people see that, you know what, we have, and it's still being lifted up, is the sin of sins, the sacrificial sin, and what I think what our Brad Bell, the pastor, and Denny would have us to do is to let's quit making so much of their sin, and let's kind of make something of our sin. Let's let them see we're vulnerable. Let us confess. We need to be careful. I said, here you go. I got her answer, but I said, but considering our concept of passport, I believe Brad Bell and Denny Burke have a better approach. We are all sinners. We're beggars. Has the LGBT plus community suffered damage from the church? Is this true? What kind of damage? How does this compare to the damage the LGBTQ plus community has inflicted on each other? Those of us who have come out of the homosexual sin remember times when people in the church didn't trust us. Perhaps people believe that homosexuality cannot be changed by the gospel of grace, or that repentance doesn't lead to transformation of the heart and life. So while people who call themselves gay or trans have many felt hurt by those things that the church has said over the years, how can we compare this to the clear and present dangers these people face from within their community? My point is, I'm trying to be careful. We're keeping it G. The people who claim the LGBTQ plus community as their own need to be rescued from it. The LGBT plus community can be redeemed on its cannot be redeemed on its own terms. You can't say LGBTQ plus in name or practice and simultaneously be rescued from sin. I think I left out her answer. Christian life after the seismic shift. What now? Hey, Brent, she's got it in here. When a Christian theology separates the gospel from the garden, it loses gospel power and integrity. She just summed up all of our message for the past month. All manner of heresy springs from denying that God's gospel is found in the garden. If you love a wayward child, don't take the bait, but do listen to what your prodigal is trying to say. Your prodigal's insistence that LGBT plus is her life center reveals something important. This is a religion. This is her religion. That's why she is so touchy about you getting all the vocabulary right. There is a difference between worship and recognition. Again, you don't take the bait. Your focus is on loving your prodigal well and praying fervently to the glory of God. This requires listening to your prodigal, studying God's word. You are running a marathon, not a sprint. Focus your energy and stamina on your spiritual health and your fervent prayer for vitality and increase of your faith, as well as your prodigal's repentance. We deleted some to get through this. The Christian faith speaks of our whole life and our whole world. And the Lord Jesus Christ in his grace that weaves this life together is strong enough to hold you fast in grief and joy as you serve in the body of Christ, the church militant, until the Lord returns. We become the church triumphant. We leave our grief and tears here, for there are no tears where we're going. Christian, this is our moment. We must speak boldly to our world. We need to live boldly for Christ. We need to do it now. Heaven has no regrets, neither do Christians. Denny, his final recommendations from his last of 3 messages. I got to turn off. I keep getting announcements, sorry. Excuse me. Final recommendations. We speak as dying men to dying men who are in need of the same grace of the gospel. So you and I are presented with this false choice concerning how to minister to our neighbors, and are told we can either walk the path of homophobia and hatred, or we can surrender what the Bible teaches to affirm homosexuality. But that's a false choice. There are more Billy Lucases in the world, and they need more than anything for someone to love them enough to build a bridge into their lives, to love them, to bring the message of Jesus to them, which means they need you, and they need me to speak for the truth, to speak the gospel, and to speak with humility. 10 quick things. I'm going to do something here in our final moment. Okay, maybe rapid fire. 10 quick things. I'm going rapid, y'all. That's what he said. The first, be a friend. And by that I mean a real friend. Don't make changing your gay neighbor a condition of your friendship. Proverbs 17:17, a friend loves at all times. Stay close. Proximity, that's one of our P's. Listen, your gay neighbor may have a story to tell. You need to hear it, and so you need to listen, not just for their sake, but for your sake. There's nothing better to wipe out erroneous caricatures than to listen to someone else's story. Listening does not equal approving. It just means that you care and that you're open to learning. Quick story. Our dear college students, last fellowship meal, I got to sit with the college students, and I really wanted to kind of pick their brains, and especially it was the wind-shaped crowd. By the way, there's a wind-shaped crowd and there's a non-wind-shaped crowd. Anyway, the wind-shaped crowd goes to wind-shaped. They get great food, and they get treated like kings and queens, and they get taken on nice trips. Did Will get it yet? He's interviewed, okay. But I sat at the table and I said, what does wind-shaped do? How do you, oh gosh, and they said it's just fantastic. Will's trying to get in. And then I said, well, what else do you do? Do you have meetings? Are you small groups? And they said, well, yeah. And then in our small groups, and they said, we're kind of being encouraged to talk about this subject. And I was kind of like, and they said, well, wind-shaped won't take a stand on that. And they said, but we can't, we're stranded on this gospel. We got nowhere else to go. They're like Peter when Jesus said, will you go also? And Peter says, where else will we go, Lord? Stranded. And they said, it was just so interesting because it sounds like they've read the book. They said, we just need to listen to them, get to know them, love them. These students just blow my mind sometimes. Proverb 18, if anyone answers before he hears, he is folly and shame. Y'all pray for me. I tend to answer, or to finish Pam's sentences for her. And I do that for other people too. I think instead of listening. So what is interesting, Barry's students. I got a note in here for you. All right, number 3, feel compassion. Know that your neighbor often feels distress, maybe unwanted same-sex attraction, and may have grown up with great distress in their family, their home. It could be that even a church setting for some of them experience is really agonizing, especially when they feel they have felt that they have nobody to talk to. In family gatherings, this was my sentence, they are the elephant in the room, and they know it. Denny Burke, he says, Denny Burke in their church, they said they feel othered. My friend who has a gay sister says she goes to church and she feels othered because they know. Confession. I've had experiences with, this is Denny Burke, a confession. He says, I have had a friend who told me that when I was young, and maybe this was 30 years ago when he was in high school, he used to make jokes about sneering jokes about homosexuals. And he says, I was out there. This friend needed somebody to talk to. And then he says, I was not safe. He's repented. He says, we need to be able to feel compassion and make ourselves a safe place. Colossians 3:12, therefore is God's chosen people, holy and dearly loved. Clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, gentleness, and patience. Share the gospel. The gospel is the good news for sinners. It's the true story about God and how God came to reconcile sinners to himself. Speak the gospel. Speak the truth. You don't have to be mean and angry. You don't have to look like David Platt did. How am I doing? Am I okay? Okay. Gospel. So, preach the gospel. All right, so quick story about the gospel and an easy way to do it. It's kind of, how do we get to the gospel? Well, I told you about my sister Susan. She said I could tell you. We were talking, and I told her about my trip to Argentina, and I said, "Oh," and she knows Chul. Chul did my mom's funeral, and they loved Chul. And told her about Chul joking with me, being Pam to me, trying to keep me straight. And then I told about Sergio. She knew of Sergio too. Asking me to share about our time in Spain and Portugal. Make it real quick, y'all. And when he said, just before I stood up, he said, "Oh yeah, don't forget to tell him about John 4 and the water of eternal life." And I said, "Do you want me to talk about our time in Spain and Portugal, or do you want me to preach?" And so I did both. And what I did, and if anybody out there hears this and you're not familiar with John 4, I encourage you to go and read it. I think most everybody here knows John 4. You don't need to even get out your Bibles. What I want you to know is just think about where Jesus had to go through Samaria instead of going around it like Jews did, because they didn't want to go through that mixed race country. He stopped at the well, and the disciples went off to get some food, and this woman shows up at noon. Why at noon? Because she was so ashamed. She didn't want to go in the morning when it was cool, and the other ladies were there. She didn't want to see anybody. And Jesus asked her for water. And just go back and look at the dialogue back and forth. It's kind of like they're talking two different languages. But what is so cool is when the exchange, and he says, what does he say? He says, "Go get your husband." And she says, "I have no husband." He was doing heart surgery, was he not? Heart surgery. And then she said, "How did she get to worship on the mountain and in Jerusalem?" I'm not sure how she got there, but she went exactly where Jesus was taking her to worship. And he said, "Well, true worship will be in spirit and truth." And then she said the statement that he was waiting for her to say. God's pretty cool. And she said, "When the Messiah comes, that is the Christ, he will tell us everything." Look at the dialogue. It was just interesting. And then what did she do? I want you to picture, especially those who haven't read this much, but just picture this woman's face. As I was going over it again, I was just thinking about her face and his face in this dialogue. And I just wonder what her face looked like there at this well when she's in this conversation about worship and all, and she talks about this long-awaited Messiah, the Christ that both the Samaritans and the Jews were waiting for. And he says, this Jewish man, oh, by the way, she said, "What, you a Jewish man asking a Samaritan woman, me, for water?" She knew something was odd about this man. Other people could tell about what you've got on. They had these whatever magician type guys, but she knew something was different. When he said, "I am he," think about what was going on in her brain. I was even going into my own mind thinking about the synapses in the brain, watching the chemicals going across. Just can you imagine? Just she's worship, yeah, and then the Messiah, he'll come in. She says, realizing that this is the Messiah. Can you imagine her reaction? He had offered her living water. She says, "Give me that water so that I don't have to come back to the well." Well, when he revealed who he was, and that face you knew that she had, this is a metaphor. That was one of our words, metaphor. She had tasted that living water. She had tasted that bread of life. And then what'd she do? She turned, still thinking, can you imagine her face? And the water jug, it says, is still there. And she leaves and starts to go to town. I was just thinking about that. What else do you think was left there at that, with that water jug? What happened to all her guilt and shame? Did she have to, like the pilgrim in Pilgrim's Progress, take that burden and get rid of it before she went to the Christ? It doesn't say anything about it. Could it be that when she recognized who he was and turned, she left that guilt and shame there at the jar, with the jar. She runs into town. Can you imagine this? This woman who is creeped through town with her shawl over her face, not meeting anybody's eyes, never wants to see anybody, goes at noon when it's so hot, nobody else will go. And she goes into town and she says what? 4 words, 5 in Spanish, 4. Come see the man. Come see the man who told me everything. And then she said, could this be the Christ? And then what happened next? Let me ask you this. How hard, once we meet this Messiah, for her, how hard was it for her to go back to town and make her name known, make his name known? Did she have to do a theology study? What Sergio asked me to do was to, and again, I did this in Spain, was I would tell them that story, and I would ask the kids whether they professed Christ or not, if they had tasted that living water. And thinking about what happened in that woman's life when she tasted that living water, well, let me ask you this. What does it look like in your life? Have you tasted it? Thinking about that woman, thinking about her reaction, thinking about, hey, back to the face, look at her face. Look at Jesus' face. You know she's just staring right in his face. Can you imagine the smile of Jesus Christ when he says, I am he? This love for this woman, this despicable, shamed, sinful woman. We've got an amazing God, and they need the gospel. Yes? Thank you. I meant to set my alarm. Okay, I only need about 2 more hours and we'll be good. The booklets we're going to give you. Oh, we'll give you 2 of these. I want everybody, I think we got enough for everybody, or if you just want one for every family, we're recommending these 2 books I mentioned this morning. Pastor Brent did an amazing job of just touching on highlighting this book, and I think what I saw at the end was so powerful is we cannot be silent. And what he did, and Brent read some of it, is, and now your mission, should you choose to accept it or not, is to help us begin to build a library of passport questions. And that's what he did. He said, if only I had asked, if only I had said, tell me about it. He said, and it's got, okay, here's the questions I can ask my dear friend. What happened? How'd you get there? And again, kind of after we've talked, or even before we've talked, we did this study on biblical sexuality And here's what I did. I sent this out. I said, what do you think about us doing it? Would you listen to a message or two? And would you help me to know how to not make dumb statements? And if I do, would you give me grace as I give you grace? And we just repair those broken, we'll break through that Berlin Wall of a barrier, and we build a bridge into their life that we might be able to share the gospel. This is beautiful too. He's got some great suggestions. The beginning talks about the two dichotomy of talking to a leader in the church that says about this, about the ministry. He says, well, they could just go, I don't care where they go. And the other guy says, well, what's wrong with a gay Christian? Two opposite poles, and they are saying, maybe there's a better way. And that's what Denny and Brad were trying to help us to see. There's a better way. And it's Passport, it's building bridges, and it's the gospel. And I hope I've been able to help you to see, actually, and dear families that ask us to do this, thank you so much, because it has really been so invaluable in my life. And what I want to do is not overwhelm you. I want to be a resource that you might be able to find answers for particular questions. We'll do the Q&A. And you'll see that we don't all agree on everything, but that's okay. But what we're going to do is start a dialogue, and let's kind of talk about these things so that we can get careful and then maybe break down some barriers, some walls and Berlin walls. I've got a little handout for that holy sexuality. That is for youth, but I think it's good for all of us. And also, there was a question that came up. Okay, well, Hunter can mention that. I got that handout. I printed it out, Hunter, the thing you mentioned as far as the lawsuit. The books are going to be available. If you would like one of those, just let me know. I've got several copies of some of them, and we'll get more copies. And if you haven't yet, again, I want to offer you the opportunity for the investment of a lifetime, an eternal lifetime. The ministry, biblical counseling ministry. I think God just wants to do something and show us his power in this wilderness of despair. He's got some plans for us, dear brothers and sisters, my children, as John would say. God bless you. Thank you. So y'all can come get handouts. I'll be up here for questions.
All right, hey, great job, John, great job. Hey, he spoke faster than David Platt speaks, which if you've ever listened to David Platt, especially on Secret Church, he speaks really fast, so you even surpassed him. And not with angry expression. I was sitting behind Debbie, and she was trying to take notes, and I said, look, I said, right here. So John gave me and Byron and Hunter this, so I was following along with him beautifully. I'm sorry you didn't have this, but
You will have it.
we will get this to you, and you can, you can go through that. So here's what we're going to do. It's 6:55. We're going to start back at 7. So you got 5 minutes. Go get some coffee, go to the restroom, stretch your legs, pick up some resources, come back to the seat, and we will start our question and answer. All right. Thank you, John. Great job. Great job. All right, guys. Let's go ahead. It is 7:02, actually. So I beg your pardon. We do, look, if you think for 1 second that we're going to be able to answer every question you ask us, or that we will have time to answer, then I've got some beachfront property in Arizona I want to sell you. But we're going to do our best. But we do have children and child care workers, so we want to honor the time. So I'm going to turn it over to Byron first. He wanted to speak about something that John said.
Yes, since John said I'm going to answer this question during the question and answer, I thought I ought to. Hey, you can be seen on the camera.
Oh, okay.
You may feel like you're not, but we've got it up on the screen so those people over there can see you. John's trying to move the whole pulpit here.
Just look into that camera and you can wave it over. She'll see you on the screen.
So the issue he was referring to is the terminology that Rosaria Butterfield uses between accepting a person without approving or affirming that person. And as you didn't say, but we probably need to say, we may not all agree up here tonight on the answers that we give. We're going to let you know what our personal opinion is, but there may be differences between our answers to different things. So everybody up here may not agree with what I'm about to say, but I just told John that I would caution him and us to be careful with those words, accept versus approval. And the way I said it to him was, in my mind, and I believe in many other people's mind, acceptance and approval is a distinction without a difference. If you look up the definition of accept in Merriam-Webster's dictionary, the second definition is to give admittance or approval to. And the third definition is to regard as proper, normal, or inevitable. And as a literature professor who deals with language all the time, she should know that you can't just redefine a word because you feel like it ought to be defined that way. And what concerns me about using that language is that you may be able to make that fine distinction, but the person you're giving acceptance to may not be able to make that same distinction. And they may interpret your acceptance as approval because they're understanding this definition of acceptance instead of the one that Rosaria defined in her book. So that's my caution. If that language is helpful to you, that's fine, that's good. But I would just be careful in how I express that to other people because it's an extremely fine line to walk between those two.
You got a microphone right there. There's two of them. You want to hand it? John's got his hand.
Things right there.
Byron, and thank you so much for clarity, and that's what we want to be clear and careful. And I was kind of trying to come up in my mind with another word, and I know that we could use besides acceptance and
That's what I meant to say. I'm
Right.
sorry. Thank you.
Yeah.
Let me finish that then. I like better. I mean, I understand that what she's trying to communicate. I understand what she wants us to understand. I like the word that Brent used during one of his previous sermons. I like the word welcome. That we make the person feel welcome. That we are loving towards them. That we are charitable and hospitable to them. All of those words to me are a little bit easier for me to be happy with and to be comfortable with than accept or acceptable.
how about we go with Colossians 3:12, clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, gentleness, and one other.
I'm gonna put Byron on the spot again here. I didn't even tell him I was gonna do this, but he and I had a good conversation at Taco Bell the other day, and he helped me to see some things more clearly. And I wonder if you would share this briefly with the group. And I know we're not, this is getting to your questions, I promise. I'm looking at the screen of all the questions that you guys have sent me. And I'm just trying to, in my mind, synthesize them down to some commonality. And Denny Burke last night, if you were here, and then John today quoting Rosaria and Denny, mentioned stay in close proximity as long as you can. Don't be the one to initiate severing that relationship. There may come a time when even being welcoming and loving and hospitable and kind and gracious, that person, whether it's a neighbor, coworker, or even a family member. They may sever the relationship from you and say, hey, if you're not going to carte blanche accept everything I do and say and am, then I'm out of here. That's a different story a little bit. But Byron's question to me at Taco Bell a few weeks ago was, or a statement was, we have to be careful with this idea of stay connected at all costs. You know where I'm going with this? And he had three, I don't know how long you've been putting thought into this, but you had three sort of boom, boom, boom points to sort of put in the other side of the scale and be careful with. And I thought they were very insightful. Would you share those with us?
I'm going to try. I've got two on the tip of my tongue and one I'm still searching for. Yes, I said that when we are in any type of relationship, it doesn't have to be just with these issues that we're even talking about here. We've already said that our goal for remaining in fellowship with, in communication with, in a relationship with someone is for the communication of the gospel. It is for us to influence them with the truth of the gospel and the saving knowledge of Jesus Christ that comes through the scriptures. And so one of the first things that you need to not only evaluate at the beginning, but all the way through a relationship is who is influencing whom. Because, as I think I said on the other day when we were talking, not everybody's going to be like this, and it may not even be most everybody is like this. But you've got to understand your desire is to influence them with the gospel of Christ. Their desire is to influence you with their understanding of sexuality or whatever the issue is that they're struggling with. And so it's not just a one-way street. You're not the only one trying to convince the other. And so maintain an awareness of who is influencing who. I lost the second one. Yeah, it'll come to me probably in the middle of another question. So you want to make sure that you're evaluating that and and that you're paying attention to the what's that?
You said make sure you're not in any way communicating that you're affirming.
Yes.
If it looks that way, then
Right. A lot of times, again, this goes back to that acceptance approval thing. Many times our graciousness and our lavish way in which we love others can be misinterpreted to be approval. And so we have to make sure that we are still drawing the boundaries of telling the truth in that process, and we're not avoiding telling the truth in order to keep the relationship going and to keep this idea of loving the person going. Part of what it means to love someone is to tell them the truth. Vodi Bakum says the definition of love is not when you're allowing yourself to show love, to define showing love to someone else as giving them what they want, when they want, just because they want it. That's not the definition of true love. And so you want to make sure that we're not doing that in the process of just trying to maintain the relationship at all costs in every situation. And I might think of the third one as we go.
I can't think of the third one right now either, but yeah, we might think of that. Okay, well, I hope that's helpful to you. And this morning I gave the definition of God is love versus love is God. So yes, keep that in mind. Here's a question that was asked, and it came up last night in the Denny Burke speech or lesson, but it says, I wanted the church to address how teachers who may soon be or already have been asked not to just accept the LGBTQ plus behavior in students, but to actively promote these unbiblical lifestyles in curriculum and the books that the students read. And I'm going to turn this over to Hunter.
I mean, here where we're at today, as far as in Georgia, a lot of those things are protected. That could change very quickly. I think. Can you hear me now? Yes, you can. What I was saying was, here in Georgia, a lot of those things are protected here. Up north, it seems not to be the case, but you got to be willing to lose your job, right? You got to be willing to lose your job. There was a gentleman who was fired for praying at football games, and he took them to court, and he won. And he won $1.7 million for it. Now, by no means am I suggesting that you see this as a way to get rich. But what I'm trying to say is that him standing up for what he believed in the end, God honored and took care of him. And we have to trust that he will take care of us wherever we're at. And if that means if we lose a job or if we... there's a lot of issues within the public school system that we have to evaluate. If you have a teacher who is pro-pride, whatever, they can hang the pride flag up in their room somewhere. They're protected to do that. Your kids will see that as they come in, and but just like they're protected and being able to do that, a Christian, if they're talking about their family and what they did last week, or if they're praying before meals or whatever, that's protected as well. And we were discussing that today, and one of the first things that these people would like to do to shut us up would be to file a lawsuit and see if the teacher or the school system is just going to buckle. And the teachers have to stand strong. And they have to be willing to even lose their job.
You should be able to use the other one. Try the other one.
Testing, okay, good, thank you. I do want to recommend, and you'll see the podcasts here, there's 4 of them in this series. Really, the first one, when I got the link to all of it, it was just the one of them, the first one, number 43. But several of them, they're just very good to help kind of think through these things. One's actually on building relationships. And again, you'll see that not everybody in the last 2 were 3 pastors, co-pastors that were, Brad and Denny were in that. They were in the first 2. But I love it. One was on identity, and one was on building relationships. But when Denny talked about this, he said it was the pronoun issue, and if you're being forced to use pronouns. And he used a term that I like. He said, what we can do in these situations, and it can be delicate, but he said, we want to try to use pronoun avoidance. You can do that. There's nothing wrong with that. Use the person's name when you're talking about them. If you're talking to them face-to-face, well, you're not going to use that pronoun that may be forbidden. And then he also said, remember Ephesians 4? Says, speak the truth in love. That is actually our podcast with ACBC. He referred to Romans 12, which says, if possible, if possible, be at peace with all men. So he's saying, using those 2 things, we want to we don't want to be around trying to pick a fight. We don't need that. But then, and we were talking about that earlier, we was kind of like addressing, and that was one of the tough questions. And with the question that came, who it came from, makes me concerned that maybe there is stuff like that going on in Floyd County. And I just thought of a couple things after we talked, and one was, in this, again, thinking of Rosario with her 5 Lives coming out, blasting the culture. And then I thought about Ken and Floyd Smith, the pastor and his wife, who reached out to this activist lesbian professor that had written this inflaming letter to the editor. And I thought, well, is there any way we, in our circumstance, could somehow, if someone confronts us like that, be a Ken Smith in their life, and maybe just even ask them, well, and I was trying to think of a situation where if in your environment, if, the world, the culture, all the culture started going crazy and went against everything you understand and be true, and then somebody asked you to do something that was contrary to what you thought was right, what would you do? And then maybe if they don't, if you don't get any concession, then perhaps Hunter found the lawsuit where the guy won $1.7 million and got his job back. Perhaps you might need to go toe-to-toe with them and say, how far are you willing to push that? Because I'm going to go all the way to the top. I'm not backing down. I can't. Where am I else to go? You are the Messiah. You're the Lord. You're the Son of God. Where can I go? We have nowhere else to go. And you can just say, I don't mean to be belligerent, but I just have nowhere else to go but this. And if you want to go toe-to-toe with me, I can't go anywhere else except this. And just a thought on how we might approach it with passport, but with firmness, truth and love, and maybe that person in your humility might be vulnerable for living water and the bread of life. I don't know, it just seems to me that God has shown us that not all tension is in our lives for a reason. This light momentary tension is preparing for us an eternal weight of glory. So I'm just trying to think carefully about how we might approach these situations with a little more care instead of just going and butting heads and going into lawsuits. Just maybe a thought.
Yeah, and if I think we're saying that that's a last resort, is to just say, fine, then fire me. That's a last resort. But being willing to lose your job, and who knows that God might, through your humble confidence, God may prick someone's heart to say, wait a minute, you're willing to lose your job over this? You've got something I don't have. What's the source of your confidence, of your peace, of your strength? I need to talk to you. Who knows, right? God sometimes does bail us out, and sometimes he leaves us in the fire. Remember in Daniel, right? We will not bow down, and our God is able to deliver us. But even if he doesn't, we cannot call you our God. We will call him our God. We have no choice, right?
I by no means was trying to say, I don't think that's what they're saying, but I by no means was saying that the first step should be, go file a lawsuit. I think that loving on whoever you can first, and then if you can't, if there's no give in the administration, then
come and borrow this and you can put it on their desk.
yeah.
No, but truthfully, the entire point of this whole conference applies to this right here, and that is that you prepare for these eventualities now. That you make your mind up now, here's where I'm going to stand. Because you do not want to be caught off guard when these things come in the future. And so you make up your mind now whether your job is more important than standing on the truth of the Word of God. And by that, deciding, if I have to, then I will trust God will pay my bills if I lose this job for standing on the truth. And that's the truth about all of these things we're talking about. With people in these lifestyles in your home or in your family or in your work or in the community around you, go ahead and prepare yourself now for what you believe and why you believe it, and that you're going to stand on these things when they come up.
Perhaps it may be helpful in preparing yourself to go and watch that message from David Platt, the sovereignty of God, the fuel for death-defying missions and for culture wars. He speaks of Bloody Mary's reign and the pastors who were put in jail, and then they were marched through the city with all the crowds around on both sides of the street. And as they went one by one, they quoted Psalm 51. Lord, you know my sins, you know my iniquity. It goes before me. I was born in sin. 51 all the way through, every one of them. And then they were being, even when they were at the stake, the fire was lit. One of them was holding the scriptures up and reading the scriptures, holding it up out of the fire. I don't know how I would handle this in your shoes, but we need to be prepared ahead of time. It's not going to be easy. And please, if you're in that situation, we need an army of prayer warriors. Do not do this alone, and do what they said. Strengthen your soul. I want to encourage you to memorize as much of God's word as you can and just repeat it over and over and over to yourself. It will nourish your soul and strengthen your soul.
If you haven't read John Piper's book, Future Grace, it's not an easy, small read, but he talks about that when the trial comes, God will give you the grace. Not before it, not after it, when it comes. And so we have to believe that. Yes, I agree. Let's be proactive. Let's be preparing our minds. Let's come to things like this. Let's talk over coffee with our Bibles open and get ready to give an answer for the hope that lies within us. But if you think about those people that John just mentioned, you say, hey, there's no way I could sing praises to Jesus until my face caught on fire like John Huss did. Yeah, you could. You could, because it's not John Huss and it's not you. It's the grace of God thick in your life at that moment, giving you the courage to stand firm. This verse has been mentioned a few times. I just want to throw it out there to you to jot down. This would be a good verse to memorize, and it's Romans 12:18, and it says, if possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. Don't you love how helpful and practical that is? It's not always going to be possible for you to be at peace with all men. It won't be. You can try your best. You can be prayed up. You can have an army of prayer warriors. You can come through it with humility and meekness. And there's still some people that are going to cut you out of their lives and say, if you won't accept me wholesale for everything I am, believe, and think and do, then I'm going to hold you hostage until you do so. And at that point, it's not possible to be at peace with them. But he says, if possible, so far as it depends on you, be at peace with all men. I think that's so helpful here. All right, here's another question that you guys ask us. And I think this one is just so ripe with application. I wonder what these three guys will say about it. I have some thoughts. I saw your hand, Anthony. We're going to get to you, brother. Should I invite my child's gay friend into my home? Now, as far as I understand the question, this person's not saying, my child is gay or having same-sex attractions and his partner is wanting to come home. John kind of talked about that, or Rosaria sort of. This is just your child has a friend, happens to be gay. Should I invite my child's gay friend into my home? Thoughts, guys?
I would say that this is application to what we've just talked about, that we want to be welcoming and loving to these in these issues. And that means as long as you're not approving of or in any way enabling the sinful behavior to take place. Having them in your home is just an opportunity to witness to them, to share the gospel with them, to be an influence in them. Now, again, like what you said, if you're inviting them in your home and you know there's going to be sin taking place as a result of that, that you can't do. But if we're just talking about inviting them over to have conversation and even a meal together, that's not you enabling or affirming any sinful behavior.
I would second everything that Byron said. There is a concern, I would think, for your child as well. Are they likely to be influenced by their friend, or do they see that friend as someone that they need to share the gospel with? So there is a concern for your child in who they hang out with and how that takes place. So, but as far as bringing them in and you witnessing to them might be good for your friend and for for your daughter or son and their friend.
I agree with both of them, and as Hunter was mentioning that, and I appreciate him, and that has been his concern, is which way is the influence going. I think it might depend on the child and the relationship with the mother and the child, or parent and child, and the instructions that Rosaria and others gave us in terms of how do we do this and prepare ourselves for this, and how do we stay strong. If the child has done that and is a prayer warrior and is so strong in the Lord that they will not be moved, I agree that maybe that might be appropriate. But if it's someone who doesn't have that kind of faith and is just wanting to have a friend that maybe accepts them, then I think that is a red flag. So
Yeah, and so that's why these questions are so helpful, because there is no one size fits all answer. You have to look at the context of your family, right? How strong is your child's faith? Are they being influenced, or are they standing their ground, but yet they are having compassion for this friend? And he's a genuine friend. She's a genuine friend. Is gay, yes, but is a friend. And if that's the case, then I can't think of a better place than your home that I would want that person to be, right? I would, now, again, don't be different than you are, right? But I would want that person to see how we wrestle on the ground with one another. I mean that affectionately. How we, we're going to watch the football, not that we're, abusing our children, but, I'd want them to see that, hey, we're going to go in the backyard and throw the football. We're going to come in. I'm going to help my wife finish spaghetti. We're going to sit down to eat a meal and break bread. And before we do, we're going to pray and give thanks to our God and Creator who blessed us with this meal. We're going to then play some cards. And before everybody adjourns for the night and goes their separate ways, we're going to have family devotion. And I would just be, wanting that person to see that. Again, not just making him or her my project, but just letting them see how the Wells family enjoys Jesus. Now, it may be that as that's going on, you find that your child is uncomfortable with that, right? Because they might think, wait, Dad, I didn't bring him over for you to preach to. And again, I'm not saying I'm just preaching to her or him. I'm saying we're doing what the Wells family does every night anyway. And it's full of Jesus, right? And fussing and fighting and then repenting and forgiving and sending the kids away. How awkward would that be, where I send my daughter away or my son away to their room for a few minutes to do some business with God, and their friend is sitting there along with me, right? That'd be a little awkward. But you get the point. I think that's a safe place for them to see Christ in action. Again, if your child's faith and stance is strong enough to handle that and not this is the beginning of a slippery slope. Does that make sense? Hopefully.
sort of. All I would say is, um, I'm the only one of the four of us up here that doesn't have children, that's not a parent. And so I probably dissected that too narrowly. That, to me, went into the parenting relationship, that determination. I was answering from the generic sense that I can't just give a straight up or down answer to the question, should you invite a gay friend over to the house? You can't just do that, blatantly say yes or no in all cases. The parenting aspect is what they brought out. That you're going to have to deal with in your relationship with your own child, whether that's appropriate or not.
And guys, if you're in the habit of sharing Jesus with everybody, and you should be, right? Then it's not something new when you're sharing Jesus with a homosexual or a lesbian or a transgender person, right? We don't want to be guilty of just targeting that oh, I need to share the gospel with that person because they're homosexual. Well, that's fishy, isn't it? And it'll come across as being disingenuous. But if we're sharing the gospel with everybody that the Lord gives us opportunity to, and now, hey, okay, you're gay, you're lesbian, you're transgender, okay, let's talk. It's not just a special thing that you mustered up the courage to do, because we're in the lifestyle of sharing the Lord Jesus Christ with people where we work, play, and live. I know we've all got areas to grow in, and I do too, but I hope that's who we are seeking to be. Okay. Several more questions, and again, y'all remind me to get to Anthony's question before we go, but we're doing fine on time here. Thank y'all for your patience. I hope this is helpful. Here's some rapid-fire questions, okay? They're all very similar. I'm just going to rat-a-tat-tat them, and then we can jump in. It says, struggling with... child struggling with gender and sexuality questions. How do parents balance having a close relationship with their child and yet still guarding them from outside influences? How do parents present the truth of God's word in a loving way? How do parents decide when to draw hard lines and when to let things go? How do parents not be afraid of your child disliking you? And how do parents make yourself have those difficult conversations rather than taking the path of least resistance? I know we don't have time to give a lot of detail to each of those 5 questions, but I just wanted you to hear those questions. Doesn't just hearing them help you a little bit to start the wheels turning and to start praying? Right? Because this came from a family in our church. I'm not going to name him or her. If they want to be revealed and known, that's fine. But that's somebody in our church, guys. I didn't just copy and paste some generic questions off the internet. That's somebody at Providence Baptist Church that's right in the thick of the tall weeds. How can we give them some hope, guys? Just a 2-watt nightlight in the hallway to keep them from stumping their toe. How can we do that tonight?
I'm looking for, I thought I had David Platt's questions. David Platt, just again, the book we gave out, Counterculture, again, a starting point for questions. Again, it sounds like this has been an ongoing thing, so it's different, but I think it's again, you're playing the long game. It's not easy, and you're looking for opportunities to stay close to them and to build a relationship apart from and despite that, such that you might be able to have that opportunity to speak. And just, again, I think asking them the questions of, I really want to be careful and helpful. I know in the church may have, made this the sin of all sins, and I want you to ask your forgiveness if we have done this wrongly. We don't have anywhere else to go except what the Bible says, because we are really sure who the clockmaker was. And we're really sure that he knew what he was doing. And we're really sure that when we don't let the clock work the way it's supposed to, it is going to break. It's like taking a hammer to it. And again, but I know you aren't going to be able to agree with us, but could you just tell me again, how can we do this better? How can we build our relationship together? Tell me what's going on. Tell me your heart. I want to be open, and again, I'm just trying to come up with ways we might think about, help me do this better. People love to help despite the relationships, but I think asking for help has been where at least in doing this, thank you for this, because it's given me opportunities to ask my relatives and friends for help, and I'm still doing it. This is going to be ongoing, help me do this right, so that as we continue this, and my wife said to make your answer short, so.
I mean, you have to love on them. You have to listen to them. I think, it's a difficult spot to be in if you're having this issue. Pointing them back to the gospel, that's the only offensive weapon that you have against these ideas, I think. I can't think of any other. Pointing them back to Christ and what he's done, and because you're not just worried about that activity or that thing that they're wanting to do, right? You're worried about their souls. So the number one thing you have to do is point them back to the gospel and point them back to who Jesus is and what he's done. And if he gets a hold of them, he'll change them.
One other thing too, I'm going to send you like a brief, just the gold nuggets from some of these books. The one, Strange New World, he does help us to see, one, how they got there, and two, why they, even if they're a Christian, they might not understand, why would God not want my gay friend to be happy? And he helps us to see what they're looking at, and this idea of them being able to believe that we believe what we say we believe. And I think he just kind of helps us see that. And then, again, here's those questions David Platt has. He says, I wish I had thanked him for his honesty and transparency and vulnerability, sharing with me. I wish I'd assured him that his revelation would not change my affection for him. There's that word. I wish I had asked him sincere questions to understand him better. How did he come to his conclusions? And again, that's what Rosaria talked about. The pastor, in his question to her, helped break down her presuppositions, basically her worldview. Why? How did you get there? Why do you think that way? So she had to go back and say, well, wait a minute. And that's when God just started working on her heart. So I think that one's very valuable. And again, so as y'all think through this, again, this is that library. Please send these thoughts and questions. How do we do this in the midst of our circumstance? God's working here. I'm confident he brought us all together for a purpose, and his purpose is our joy as we glorify him, and those go together. And he's sovereign, and he loves us all, including our children.
Yeah, I would just say that all three of them are thinking the same thing. They're just not saying it, and I'm not in any way implicating that you don't feel the same way. But it requires taking responsibility for your God-given responsibility as a parent. And one of the helpful things that Denny said is you are always that child's parent. Doesn't matter if they're 35 years old, you are always their parent. Now, they may choose to turn their back on you and walk away, but that doesn't negate the fact that you're still their parent. You still love them. You still want what's best for them. And pray a lot about not letting yourself slip into the same error that they have, and that is find yourself more concerned with finding your child's approval than giving them the truth. That's what makes the conversations difficult, when we're more concerned about being rejected than about telling the truth in love.
And you will be under constant pressure, as Denny said. So stand strong in the Lord and in His mighty power. This is forces of evil we're fighting against. It's not our children.
So echoing what these guys said, get some prayer warriors in your life, to echo what Rosaria said. Don't be too prideful. Don't be too ashamed or timid. Put it out there to some people that you know pray. Fast. Prayer and fasting. I do think practically, these outside influences. I got 4 kids. I know how it is. You get so exhausted proofreading books that they're asking you if they can read, checking their internet history or which apps they can download, what music they're listening. It's exhausting. It is exhausting, and there's no way we can micromanage every second of their lives, and we wouldn't want to if we could, because then when they left the house and you're not right there as the hovering helicopter parent, then they're going to crash and burn. So we have to try to teach them how to think right and love what is right, and I know that's difficult if they're an unbeliever or a rebellious believer. But I agree that, my roof, my rules. You're going to live under this roof. I'm going to have some rules for you. And don't just be rule, but where the rubber hits the road, you're going to have to take a stand. And I know one of the questions is deciding which hard lines to draw and when to let it go. And that's so tough, I know. Say yes as much as you can to things that just really don't matter, so that when you got to say no, it gets their attention, right? Can I put syrup on my Fruit Loops and then whipped cream and cherry? Yes. Yes, but yeah, you're going to eat it all. But yes, say yes when you as much as you can, so that when you have to dig your heels in the sand and say no, it's an attention getter, right? Love them, spend time with them, get on their turf. I don't mean sinfully, but your kid likes PlayStation 4, learn how to play PlayStation 4, yes. Right? Your kid likes to write poetry, start writing some poetry with them, right? Find ways to connect on their level without preaching to them, just spending time with them, reminding them, I love you, you're my son, you're my daughter, God gave you to me. I remember holding you in my arms when you were, just a wee little lad, and now here you are growing up, and I love you. Find ways to spend that time with them. And then, as I said today, quoting John Piper in his Ask Pastor John, he said, be willing to be condemned as being judgmental, because that might be the price that you have to pay for loving them well. Mm-hmm. I hope that doesn't happen to you, but it might happen to you. It happened to Jesus Christ, and he said, if they persecuted and hated me, they're going to persecute and hate you too. Okay. Hey, Anthony, go ahead and give your question. I got like two more here. Can you come to the microphone, because we are recording these, and we want people to hear them.
So it's a couple of things. The first thing is, can you send us a list of people who've detransitioned that we can read that up? The second thing is, we're in a fool's paradise if we think Georgia is somehow different to the rest of America, because it isn't. The Georgia state is now paying for state employees to have sex changes because it was cheaper than a lawsuit. And when I've spoken to that Huffstetler bloke who used to work with me, well, that was just a lawsuit. I said, well, you need to change it. So you need to all contact your state representative and tell them they need to work on that, because you don't need to be paying for it. But a friend of mine in Atlanta now goes to a school board meeting with a friend of his from his church, and it's no different. They're talking with those, you read the book, and they shut you down. You can't use that kind of language here. And the guy says, but you're reading this to my 5-year-old. It's right here. And, I took a class at college. It was an art class, and we were told to asked to go to a thing called a poetry slam. And these school kids were writing poetry. So I said to the lecturer, can I bring my 10-year-old? Oh, no, you wouldn't want to do that because, the language might be bad. I said, but these are school kids. Well, we've got to have freedom of expression. So, and we'll have a lawsuit. I mean, the Constitution is just a piece of paper. We're the only place in the world where we can go and sue people. The rest of the world, you're just told to shut up and get on with it. And so that's not always going to be the answer, is this the Constitution says.
Thank you, brother.
But anyway,
Thank
we
you,
have
brother.
the same problem in our family that some of you people got.
Yeah.
I'm not allowed to say you people.
Hey, by the way, John does have some testimonies, and I have some as well, but he's probably got more, of the detransitioners who are saying, I wish someone had told me this before I went into steps 2, 3, and 4, right? Some of them are not Christian testimonies. They're just saying, my life is forever scarred, no pun intended by this. But some of them are Christian testimonies that have come out of that and said, now my identity is in Jesus Christ, not in this or that. Hey, here's a question that came up. A lot of context to it, heartbreaking context. Again, this is someone in our church, so I'm not making this up. But a lot of stuff that I'll leave out, but where the rubber meets the road is this. A family member has, let's see here, right here, sorry. If I'm reading it correctly, I'm trying to scan. They have had a sex change operation, and we've talked about that. There's really no such thing. You're going to be the sex that God created you to be, regardless of the cosmetic surgeries or hormones or whatnot. The pronoun, you are what God called you and created you to be. But I know what people mean by sex change surgery. But it's a sticky situation in the family, and someone just said, well, that's the way it is. We have to accept that, right? It's done. This is who they want to be. We just have to accept it. And the person asking this question says, well, maybe we do have to, but that doesn't mean that we have to agree with it. So that's we've kind of hit this already of acceptance versus affirmation. Byron likes the word welcoming versus affirmation. Colossians 3:12 versus affirmation. So thoughts, guys, about this? Your family member is saying, just shut up and accept it. It's the way it is. And you're there going, but. How do you counsel this family? It's a tough question when I reach to hand the mic and no one wants to take it.
It's like trying to have influence passport for your grandchildren. You're having to go through someone, and that complicates it exponentially. And I think all I can suggest is, and this is what my goal is just to stay as close in proximity and love as hard as I can the family, and show them the love of God. Denny said, our job as believers and the church, we're teaching gender and biblical sexuality to the church so that we will be firm. And as far as the rest of the culture is concerned, our role is to put that gospel on display. And if we can just continue to do that by just loving those people, and maybe keep in mind Jesus Christ loving people as the nails were going into his hands and his feet. It's not easy, but proximity. How are y'all doing? How's it going? I'm praying for y'all. Love you so much. But, when it comes, push comes to shove, I can't budge off of this. And I can't use those. Well, again, I would say I can't use those pronouns. I'm not going to tell you that. But again, just stay as close as you can in contact, and just ask them, how's everybody doing? How's he doing? How are y'all doing? Just know, I know this must be hard for you. Just compassion. Clothe yourself with compassion, kindness, gentleness, and patience. And that prayer, bold, specific, and desperate, and expectant. Now to him who is able to do exceedingly abundantly more than all we can ask or imagine. Just watch. Just keep your eyes open. He's going to blow your mind by how he answers our prayers. It may not be this one, but just keep our eyes on him. Sorry, Pam.
I just want to, this hasn't come up directly in any of the questions. It has been addressed a little bit in Denny's, one of Denny's messages that we talked about. When I was growing up, when the three of us on this side of the stage were growing up, the biggest issues for people in school was peer pressure and bullying. Today, in our infinite stupidity, we took what was peer pressure and bullying, and that was a face-to-face kind of thing, and we made it anonymous and inculcated it in social media. We made it have a legitimacy and removed all barricades to protecting other people from hearing that peer pressure and that bullying and that negativity and that sin that's propagated there. And then, as if that were not enough, social media not being, not conforming well enough on its own to the agenda of Satan in influencing our children, we now are going to inject into that artificial intelligence that will do the job for us. So we need to be very, very careful. As John Gersner said, you have to have a PhD to be that stupid. And it is certainly within your purview as parents to limit how much influence social media and the internet has in your life, in your child's life, and in your own life, but especially for them, because we just took the problems we had and exponentially mounted them.
There's Apple probably has this. Google, Samsung certainly has it. It's called Google Family Link. And what you can do is every phone that is, so I'm the dad and I've got the master phone here, but every phone under our plan that I want to, I can connect to that. And it, for starters, will allow me to set a time when that phone turns off and it turns on. So I don't have to just pester and, hey, it's 10:30, turn the phone off. It turns it off. You can't use it. But it also will help you to filter and limit which apps they can download or not. It will tell you when they download a new app. I'm not saying your kids are going to like this. I am also saying that you could abuse that as a dad or mom, right? There's sin on both sides, but that is a tool. This phone is not evil and it's not good. It is amoral. A lot of good things can come from this phone, but a lot of bad things can come from this phone, as well as this computer. So that's just a way to help. Again, you're trying to teach your children how to think, not just what to think. But that can help them to have some boundaries and some guidelines. Okay, our time is up. I want to throw this last one out, and I beg your pardon. I'm not even going to give these guys a chance to answer it because it's just going to be a question answer. But I feel like the Lord put this one on my mind, and I'm going to say it and answer it, and it's going to leave you with a lot more questions, and that's okay. This is the beginning of the dialogue, not the end. But I saw a question somewhere this week that said, do I have to become straight to be a Christian? Think about that for a second. I think that's a pretty profound question. I don't know if the questioner meant for it to be so profound. Do I have to become straight to be a Christian? I don't know how you would answer that, but I think the way you answer that could say a lot about where you are in this journey. You know, got to be careful, don't we, of just saying, well, yes, of course. Is that really our goal, is to go out to Rome, Georgia, and Cartersville and New Harley and make people straight? Last I checked, a lot of straight people going to hell. A lot of them. More straight people are going to hell than homosexuals because there's just more straight people. So be careful that, again, you're not just trying to make people straight. I talked about our goal is not heterosexuality, but holy sexuality. And as you're sharing the gospel, I remember sharing the gospel one time with a young man, and I didn't even bring it up. I didn't even know this was happening. But I'm exhorting the lordship of Jesus Christ. I'm telling him that he must repent. And he said this, you mean if I want to follow Jesus, I got to quit having sex with my girlfriend? And I said, thank you for your honesty. And yes, it does mean that. It does mean that. Thank you for bringing that up. But yes, if you're going to follow Jesus as Lord and repent of your sins, that's a sin. Let me show you where that's a sin. And yeah, you've got to repent. Same thing I would say to someone struggling in another area, right? You might not bring it up, but hopefully as you're probing and pushing the lordship of Christ and exalting repentance and faith, they're going to say, wait a minute. You mean to tell me that if I want to follow Jesus, blank has to hit the road? Yeah. Yeah, again, not perfection. Nobody in this room is perfect, but you can't come to Christ with one hand reached out to hold his hand and another hand hidden behind your back holding on to your darling sin. It doesn't work that way. Amen? Oh, me? All right, guys, we love you. I hope this has helped a little bit. We're going to close out with a song, and then we're dismissed. If we didn't get to your question, send them to John. John can send them to the elders, and we will try to get with you as soon as possible on that, okay?